But starting with the buy low, sell high, we'll start as always with the quarterbacks. Who is your buy low quarterback for week 11?
Just quickly, mate, you looked like a rooster in the podcast yesterday. I've just seen it. I've just seen the preview on Insta, and
I would look like a 3 out of 10 max.
no, I'm talking straight 9. But
thanks, man.
buy low QB this week. Ryan Tannehill scored 10 last week against a very tough Indy defense. He does have Baltimore and Indy coming up, but then his schedule opens up, and I expect him to ball out after that, if not during those games. He's just so efficient. He gets a few rushing yards, can get a rushing touchdown. He's just a beast.
Yeah, so I had Drew Brees, to those who haven't listened to the podcast before, and I too are thankfully on my bench as backup, so I'm not in the worst pickle, but I'm going to try and look to get Tannehill in as my QB2 in our Superflex league, because I think he will definitely be undervalued at the moment. Are you not getting a little bit concerned though, because I think he's had like 5 sub 20 scores in a row or something like that? Is that concerning you, or do you think he'll eventually just go back to the Tanners we expect and love?
If you look through his scores, most of his big scores have been against pretty like subpar opposition, but I mean, so he might struggle the next 2 weeks, is what I'm saying basically. But after that and into playoffs, he's got a good schedule, and like you'd expect him to average 20, I reckon.
Yeah, I think this was basically a running theme of my research, that pretty much all the Titans players are a buy low for me at the moment. As you said, they do have a tough couple weeks, but with the running game, the Ravens actually aren't too good on the running game. So Henry might get going, and then all of a sudden the whole Titans team gets going. The Colts after that will be tough. But yeah, as you mentioned I don't think you said the specific teams, but easy fixture round 1 of the playoffs. They've got the Jags and the Lions. So this goes for AJ Brown, Derrick Henry, Tanners, even Jonnu Smith if you need a tight end. I think they're all pretty spicy prospects at the moment, because you'd expect that Titans offense to pick up.
Fully agree there.
But yeah, I'm interested in Tanners, that's for certain. He hasn't been rushing as much as last year, I don't reckon. I can't. Like he used to get bulk rushing touchdowns, and that's what made him so good. But hopefully he starts doing that again. But he's good enough in the air to still be a relevant quarterback anyway, without those rushing touchdowns. My buy low is actually my own quarterback, Deshaun Watson. He had a 14.12 against the Browns, but it's a bit misleading, that score. The weather was absolutely crazy. I'm sure all fantasy nerds by now have heard that, given some of the passing, like some of the wide receiver and quarterback scores over the week. There was a lot of bad weather throughout the United States, but especially in Cleveland, there was a lot of wind. I was looking deeper into his stats, and I think he had 160 yards from 20 completions, 30 attempts. And over his career, he's averaged over 12 yards per completion. And on the night, he was averaging around 8. So he was clearly, because of the wind, he was looking like lower. He was looking for the small targets, which isn't really his game. So expect him to be back in the following weeks, back to his best of just firing big shots. The next 2 weeks, he's got the Patriots and Lions. I will admit he has a really rough, especially the first week of playoffs. He's got a tough run there. I think they play the Colts. So potentially you wait for a big score in the Patriots and Lions, and then he could be mentioned in our sell high section. But for me, he's definitely a buy low this week, because I think that 14.12 is definitely going to see him undervalued. Before we get on to your sell high quarterback, I would also just mention Russell Wilson. First sub 20 score all year, but it was against the Rams, who are currently at the moment probably the best passing defense in the league. And his fixture doesn't really open up. They've got some tough games. I think they play the Giants, the Eagles, and the Cardinals in the next 3, who are all pretty decent defenses in their own right. But he's still going to be a reliable quarterback 1 week in, week out. But I don't think we can expect the 30 plus scores that he was pumping out the first month. But expect him to go back to his like 25s and stuff like that. So he's someone else.
But who's top 3 quarterback?
Yeah, 100%. Who's your sell high?
Sell high. I actually kind of struggled with this section. There wasn't really many names that popped up, but I went with Teddy Bridgewater. He's just scored 18, I believe, which is decent, but he's dealing with a bit of an injury at the moment. He's questionable. I'm not sure if I think he's expected to play, but I don't know. I think you could probably because his average is still pretty high, so I think you could flip him for someone a bit better, like maybe a Joe Burrow or Stafford or someone like that. Then I would do that, but I wouldn't really like be in a rush to sell him. As I said, there wasn't really anyone that stood out to me.
Yeah, no, it's a fair pick. You never really want someone with an injury cloud because they're usually going to play through it, but just because they're playing doesn't mean they're healthy.
Yeah,
Um,
and
so yeah,
I think
I
his
back that.
average is kind of higher than what you could probably expect from him because his average is like almost 19.
Yeah, I think his first month is his first 6 weeks is carrying him. I think
Yeah,
the last month has been a little bit
yeah,
um, less impressive. My sell high, yeah, these two, I'll be honest, if you have them, they're kind of set and forget, so you're probably not going to sell them. But if you are a player, if you are a fantasy player who's always looking for a Macca's little win, maybe you go sideways to a quarterback or and you try and upgrade somewhere else or something like that. But for me, my sell high is Aaron Rodgers. He's had 325 plus scores in his last four, but they have been in his last four. He's played the Texans, the Vikings, the Niners, and the Jags, who are, barring the Vikings, all bottom 10 pass defenses so far this season. And now he has the Colts, the Bears, and the Eagles, who are three like top 10 defenses. So look, he's probably still going to be good. He's probably going to still put out QB1 production, but potentially might be a little bit overvalued at the moment. So you could look to downgrade him a little and try and get an upgrade in another position in that trade. But yeah, look, I agree with you. There's not too many sell highs. Josh Allen's someone else as well. But he's on his buy, so his value is probably not that high anyway. But he's coming off a 36 and a 27. And for me, the thing that scares me about the Bills is they've in the first week of playoffs, they've got the Steelers and the Broncos. So probably wouldn't really want him going into the playoffs as your QB1, but they do have the Chargers and Niners before then, so you could wait for another big score potentially and see his value increase even more. So yeah, not too many sell highs, but
yep.
so some things to think about there. Before we get into our running backs, if you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe because we do this every week and it's always good fun. And get around the episode if you're enjoying it or the clip, however you're watching or listening. Running back buy low though, I think I might have teased mine a little bit before, but who have you got here?
Well, I've actually gone with a bloke who just scored 26 points, but I still think you can buy him low because he looks set to break out as a potential RB1 going forward, and that's DeAndre Swift. Started his first game of the season last week against Washington, who do have a good defensive line
Yeah,
and are good against the run, and he absolutely tore them up. I think it was 16 carries for 80 yards, 6 receptions, and a touchdown or something like that. 26 PPR fantasy points. And now that he's the starter, he's going to have good enough of a workload that he's just going to ball out every week. I think he's going to be similar to Miles Sanders in the last portion of last season, and he averaged like close to 20. So if you can, I'd say he's probably a back end RB1 going forward, and I
yeah,
still think you can get him for cheaper than that, just because
yeah,
not
100%.
everyone
Because
not
he's
everyone realizes
average.
it yet. Yeah,
Yeah, and he had like a 3 weeks ago or something. So if you're
yeah.
just looking at the recent scores, you might think last week was just a fluke, but it was definitely not. Yeah, big fan of the Swifter. My buy low is Derrick Henry. I think he scored 6 last week, the week before last, sorry, and then scored 11 against the Colts. He had over 100, and the week before was against the Bears. So two of the better run defenses going around. He had over 100 yards on the ground against the Colts at over 5 yards per carry. So he's certainly not out of form or bad. He just hasn't been getting the scoring that he usually does. But yeah, to score over 10 points without a touchdown against the Colts, like that's pretty elite, but it's decreased his average overall. And like I mentioned before, in the playoffs, they've got the Jags and the Lions. So
Yeah.
Jags and the Lions for Derrick Henry over 2 weeks, you're genuinely probably looking at 50 there, maybe 40 as a minimum. But yeah, big weeks to be had there for Henry. So I'd be trying to jump on him. Sadly for us, he's stuck in a team with someone who doesn't play. But yeah, Derrick Henry's definitely a buy low. You had a crack at him the other day, didn't you? You had a crack to try and get Derrick
I
Henry.
messaged him in the group chat, Keenan Allen for Derrick Henry. Obviously, he's not going to. It was a bit of a joke. No one would accept that. But
well, also he's not going to look at it. But
true. He did laugh react the message though.
Okay.
But yeah,
good to see. Good to see. Who's your sell high for the running backs?
Yeah, sell high. I've got two here. Todd Gurley. I think he's been in this section for me before, but his average is still fairly high, where you can get an upgrade out of him. And then another one, Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb's a beast and probably an RB1. But I think people think he's going to be better than he is for fantasy because he's pretty much splitting carries with Kareem Hunt, and he's going to be lucky to get one reception each week. So you're pretty much relying on him to pump out 120 yards and a touchdown just to get you a good score. So I reckon there'd be people out there that would, you could trade him for like Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, someone like that, and that would be an upgrade, I reckon.
Yeah, I was looking at his score. It's actually not that good considering there was like a long range effort, and it was a game that suited the running back. So yeah, I wasn't really that impressed with it. So yeah, I completely agree with you there. Any running back, no matter how good, well, unless they're like Derrick Henry level, if they're not getting receiving yards, it's hard to back them in as an RB1 completely. My RB sell high, is Ronald Jones. A bit of an interesting one. He's probably one of the most inconsistent blokes going around in terms of touches. He had 23 carries, which is very promising, but he had a 98-yard TD in there, which is 16 points, pretty much, just short of 16 points. And if you take away that, I know it's pretty stiff to just take away a play, but he didn't even crack 10. So, yeah, I'm not really that. And I think it was against the Panthers, so one of the worst rush defenses in the comp. So I'm not that pleased with Rojo, even though 23 carries is exciting because he's been lacking in the last few weeks. But yeah, I'd probably steer clear of both Tampa running backs at this point. It's just so inconsistent who gets the touches. But yeah, for me, Rojo will definitely be overvalued this week. His average is still pretty high from that big stretch he had back earlier in the season. So I'd try and offload him at the moment. And I would, oh no, they've already played the Saints twice, but I don't know what their fixtures coming up is like. But yeah, I'd be offloading Rojo. Do you cop that?
Yeah,
or not really?
Good call. Good call.
Thanks, mate. Always a pleasure to have your approval. All right, on to the wideouts, the skilled men. Who's your wide receiver buy low? I always reckon there's a lot in the wide receivers. It was tough to pick.
The wide receiver is always deep, but I think you might have this bloke as well. But AJ Brown, 100%. In my opinion, 100% the biggest buy low this week. Exact same as what you said with Tanners and Derrick Henry. They played Indy. He dropped a 60-yard touchdown, which hurt because I have him, but he only scored 3 points, which means the owners would probably get a little bit scared, but he's just an absolute beast. And as soon as he gets past this Baltimore Indy, he probably averaged 30 afterwards, just reel off 80-yard plays. So yeah, I'd be throwing the kitchen sink at him, but you can definitely get him for cheap.
Yeah, he's not even. He legit does well against good teams as well. Yeah. Like I was looking at his recent stats, and yeah, he had decent numbers against like Pittsburgh and stuff. So
all it takes him is just one play, and he's won you the week.
Yeah, that's like what made him so good at the end of last year. You just score like a 70-yard TD every week. But yeah, 100%. I was going to put him in, but I had too many Titans players, so I thought I'd change it up. But I'm glad that you mentioned him. My guy is my man, DK Metcalf. I don't actually think you could buy him that low, to be honest. I think everyone froths DK that much at the moment. But coming off a 4.8, got gloved by Jalen Ramsey, who's probably the, the perfect guy to glove Metcalf. I don't think anyone else in the competition could do a better job. So you can just look at that as a one-off. Yes, I guess you can consider the fact that they play them in the fantasy finals, but that's a long way away. And before then, they'd play a couple tough defenses, but it's Seattle. You expect them to be putting up points every week, around 30. So he's likely to be receiving 1 or 2 TDs a week. He's had great volume in the last 6 weeks, barring that one. So I'll try and get DK at it, but as I said, I don't think his stock is that low.
Yeah.
And then my other guy, this is debatable because he had had his least target since his first game of the season, and that might be due to players coming back. But I'm going to put it down to James Bradbury being one of the best lockdown corners in the league. But Travis Fulgham, he had 1 catch for 8 yards, only scored 1.8. But yeah, as I mentioned, James Bradbury, absolute beast. He saw 5 targets, so Bradbury was causing him absolute havoc there. But coming up, they've got the Browns, Seahawks, and Packers. So although the Eagles' offense isn't really firing on all cylinders at all, you'd hope he goes back to his pre-bye form where he was consistently getting 15 plus. So Travis could be probably a risky option, but someone you could look to get because I think he's worthy of a starting spot in most lineups. Are you worried about Travis Fulgham, or do you reckon it was just James Bradbury?
Bradbury would have had an impact, but I'm a bit worried. Like he's definitely dropped down my rankings quite a bit after that. Like Jalen Reagor and the others coming back is pretty frightening for him.
Yeah, the best thing about Fulgham is he's like Wentz's favorite red zone target. I think he still had one of his targets was in the red zone on the weekend, but 100% a bit worried. Jeffrey, he only had 1 target. He wasn't very involved on the weekend. Yeah, I think he's going to be pretty limited for the rest of the year though, unless they step it up. But because he's so injury prone, I don't think he'll see many snaps. And then as you said, Reagor got it coming back, and then Ertz is probably going to be back this week, but I'm not sure what's going on there.
Another thing is with Sanders back, I think they're probably going to run the ball more.
Yeah, that's true. But yes, so probably one to keep an eye on. But I think if you want to risk it for the biscuit, could be an interesting pickup. But yeah, had a bit of a stinker this week. Who's your sell highs?
Yeah, quickly, I just looked up the cornerback rankings, and Rhodes and Ramsey are the top 2 ranked lockdown cornerbacks this season. So don't worry about AJ Brown or DK.
Yeah,
they're going to be beasts. They just copped a bit of a hard tag this week.
The boys.
Wide receivers, sell high. Tyler Lockett.
Yeah.
He's single-handedly won you 2 games this season, but if you take those out, he genuinely averages about 6 points per game, and more often than not, he's going to put you in danger of losing than he is going to win you the week. And he's averaging 19, and every single week he's projected 19 on ESPN Fantasy, which is like in the top 3 wide receivers. So there'd be loads of people in your league out there who'll just look at that and say, yep, give me him. Let me get him. So I'd be selling him. I wouldn't say he's a wide receiver 1 going forward. He's probably maybe top 18-ish, something around there. But yeah, I'd definitely be looking to sell him.
Yeah, I do not rate Tyler Lockett at all. As soon as he scored that 50, I would have been looking to sell him every single week following that. I wouldn't have rested on my laurels. He is not really coming to my analytical consideration for like 3 weeks now. I just don't rate him at all. So yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think he's probably been a sell high for like 6 weeks straight.
Yeah.
For me, my guys, this is once again pretty tough. This guy's an absolute beast. I froth him in terms of fantasy, but Stephon Diggs had an absolute blinder against the Cardinals, put up 25 points. The week before, he also put up 20 plus against Seattle. But this is once again due to the Bills' fixture in the playoffs. They have Pittsburgh and Denver in the first week of playoffs. And look, Diggs is probably a reliable starter even against those tough teams, but I don't know if he's going to go big against either of those guys. So I think you could get quite a lot for him at the moment. So I'd probably consider him. And then my other guy I was going to mention was Mike Evans. I just wouldn't really want to be taking Mike Evans into the playoffs with how inconsistent he is. He did see 11 targets against the Panthers, which is a good sign, but only caught 6 of them, had a touchdown as well. Got the Rams this week, and so you wouldn't be expecting much there. And they've also got the bye to come. So I'd probably be looking to get rid of Evans. Similar to Lockett, I wouldn't want him in my fantasy team, just too volatile at the moment. Um, Tight ends, the position we know and love. Who's your buy low here, mate?
I'm going with Hayden Hurst, actually. I was looking through his stats, and he is flying under the radar.
Yeah, he's been good this year.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know how.
he's been,
He snuck up to like 6th or something
yeah,
in total points. I think
he's genuinely flying under the radar, and he hasn't scored below 10 points since week 4 or 5. And
it's
the
crazy.
last 3 weeks, he's had 7 targets, 8 targets. So he's a huge part of the Atlanta offense. He's pretty much like not quite as good, but Austin Hooper, he balled out for Atlanta last season, playing tight end for them.
Yeah,
And Hurst is doing a pretty decent job. So, yeah, I reckon he's a pretty reliable tight end going forward. So if you need tight end help, I'd try and get him.
yeah. I 100% agree with that one. Hurst is definitely flying under the radar. Took my breath away when I saw him up there in the total points. But my tight end, there was actually quite a few. The tight ends had a shocking week.
Yeah, they did.
I think there was only 3 went 10 plus or something like that. It was crazy. But my guy is Evan Ingram. He's been killing it of late. He's had 9 targets, 10 targets, 10 targets, and then on the weekend he went 3. So I would just put that down to just a random coincidence. They have the bye this week, so his value is going to be even lower. And then they've got the Bengals and the Seahawks, so pretty juicy fixtures there. And yeah, I'm big fan of Evan Ingram. So if you've got issues at the tight end position, I don't think there's been injuries of late, but I don't know if you don't really fancy a tight end all that much, or you don't care about the position, you could downgrade down to Ingram as such and upgrade somewhere else in a trade or something like that. But yeah, I think Ingram will be a little bit undervalued. I also think Hawkinson, if a owner is like worried about the 3 he put up on the weekend, he's someone else you could get pretty low value. And Mark Andrews is another guy.
Yeah.
He's been pretty inconsistent all year, but Nick Boyle went down with a
Yeah,
season-ending
that's
injury.
huge, actually.
And because they traded away Hayden Hurst last year, they're now Andrews is like the only non-mythical tight end there, and they froth tight ends at Baltimore. So Andrews, his stocks have definitely risen in the last 48 hours, in my opinion. Who's your sell high here?
Yeah, I agree with that, Andrews. He's going to ball out. Sell high. I used to like this guy like a month or 5 or 6 weeks ago, but Hunter Henry, ever since their bye in week 6, his numbers have been pretty down. He's averaging like 5 or 6 points, not many targets. But this past week, he scored a touchdown and put up quite a decent score. But he still only had, I think, 4 or 5 targets. So he's someone that I'd probably look to sell. Like maybe try and sell Hunter Henry for Evan Ingram, something like that. I reckon that'd be an upgrade.
Yeah, pretty much everyone has benefited from Herbert except for Hunter Henry. His stats have taken a nuking this season. I feel bad for him, and they're also just giving other tight ends random opportunities, which you don't like to see as a fantasy coach. I think this guy's been in my sell high 3 times, and at this point, I think we can just say he's good. But I'm sorry, mate. I'm going your man once again, Rob Gronkowski, formerly my man, but 3 targets. He had 4 3 weeks ago as well. I just don't like his lack of volume. He's basically a reliable TD scorer at this point, though.
Yeah.
So I guess you could say that, but I just don't really rate that in my fantasy players. So I would trade him because his average is very high. He's got the name value as well as the Gronk. And they've also got the Rams this week and then the bye in 2 weeks. So and the Chiefs in between that. So pretty tough run of fixtures. And I wouldn't, unless you're locked in playoffs, I probably wouldn't want someone with a bye the week before playoffs because that could be a crucial fixture for a lot of people around a lot of leagues.
Yep.
So yeah, That's my sell high. Sorry, brother. I know he's your man. That's it for that section. Enjoyed it as always. Any final words, or shall we get into our streaming candidates?
Yeah, I just want to say I do not feel safe at all owning the Gronk. Like these past 2 weeks, I've just been petrified of him scoring 0. But I mean, he continues to have a big play here and there. So,
and they've got good playoff fixtures as well.
Yeah.
So if you're locked in playoffs, he could almost be a buy low, I guess, with those 3 targets. But yeah,
it's a miracle. Oh yeah! What about that one? Unbelievable. Balotelli, Aguero. Crowd cheers. Here's Siddle.